said at the outset, so we have kind of a little shortened session, and it has been further shortened by a later beginning. So we are basically an hour, and kind of, but the idea is that we wanted to do three things actually. A little bit revisiting, deepening the framework, two practices with you, and then case stories, right, that Manish will share. So that's kind of what we'll be stimulating. We'll have like a little bit of conversation between, but that conversation is likely to be also somewhat, I mean, we can, continue that and also stay a little longer.
Okay.
Where does it sit, given the framework I shared this morning, right? It's basically sitting what we are doing now, moving from attention to intention. When I developed the model 20 years ago, right, kind of basically everything was new, right? Right now, right, design thinking, prototyping, everyone talks about that. That's kind of, it has been mainstream. Mindfulness, even, not on a collective level, true, but at least kind of on some level, at least everyone's talking about that, right? This one, right, the co-sensing, right, and how we're deepening our attention, that's where most people say, yeah, I know how to do it, and the truth is, no, you don't. This is kind of, that sounds like the least sexy of all these things, and it's the most important. It's kind of the one that gets least attention, even though it's the most significant. Because if you don't get the key to collective creativity is not, as we all know, coming up with good ideas. The key of the collective creativity is moving into a space of co-sensing, paying attention with your mind and heart wide open, and then sharing what has been learned. So we have a shared. We move from individual seeing and sense making to shared seeing and sense making. That's the foundation. Once you have that in place, there's no end for the creativity, right? You naturally kind of activate creativity. But if you don't do that, it's like building a house and you start with the second floor, not with the foundation. I mean, it would be stupid in the real world to do that. In social science and social architectures, we do it all the time. We start with, the second floor. We don't start with the foundation. What is the foundation? The co-sensing. So we will be focusing on that for that obvious reason. Harish this morning, I think it was interesting, right? So just to situate that a little bit in the moment and the discussion, conversation we are having with each other. So he tried to deflect his own role. Totally unsuccessful. Everyone was talking about it, right? There was like a little irony in that. But of course, we all understand why and so on, and why it didn't work as well. And why it didn't work is, I think, kind of one way of, because this is source, right? Kind of connecting to source. Now, one way of saying, many of us are founders here, right? And when you're a founder of something, you have a particularly connection. It's not that it's your brainchild at all. You have a connection to a creative, generative source that is something sacred, that is something that you try to be a steward of. And if you hand over that organization to a team, a group, or another person, right, that stewardship needs to be. If there's no there, what is it you're going to do? So I think it's not just finding the new CEO, right? It's kind of, there's a deeper dimension to that. And it was interesting to see that. And it has everything to do with these deeper spaces, what Manish will talk about and what I will be talking about. Then another topic was, remember Carl talking about Kairos, right? He talked about there was this moment in May, he realized this thing is not working. He did not take action. That was such a beautiful story. And that's really about the entire essence of what that whole thing is about, right? All in his story. And what is it? So when we talk about, usually when people talk about emerging future, or the future, right? They talk about, 2030, 2050, whatever. It's kind of another place, another time, often other people also, right? What I learned from innovators, if I kind of learn anything, it's this. the future is utmost personal because it is a possibility that is looking at you because it depends on you to manifest, to come into the world. So it's kind of something that's unborn that needs you to come into being. So that's what he exactly described, right? It was clear in his mind. He had the awareness of that, but he did not take the lead. And that's exactly what presencing is. Presencing is connecting with that part of yourself that is looking at yourself because so it's something that's looking at you that isn't you, but depends on you to manifest. Then there was, a power of listening. We talked about that, and so we will talk about that. And the whole last panel about education. This is simple. So application. Essentially, it's not kind of demand and supply. But what is it? So one simple way of framing this, it's about building or kind of activating the capacity to co-shape the future, right? To co-sense and co-shape the future. That's really what it is. And that always has been the secondary purpose of all learning and education. It's just kind of that now that we move in this time of disruption, it is more important than ever. And basically all school systems are misfit for that, are not designed for that. And that's the essence of this process is just that, right? To co-sense and co-create the future. So it requires a different learning environment. And that's basically the practices that we will share are all about that. So, I talked about open mind, open heart, open will, right? But what is it we have been seeing going on the past 10 years, right? The exact opposite, right? The freezing and closing of the mind, heart, will, aka an amplification of ignorance, hate, anger, and fear. And that's how somebody just won a presidential election in the US. That's how you build a $1 trillion industry. That's the business model, as we all know, right? We discussed it for years. So it's not good enough for us as change makers to just focus here. We need to connect with this energy and transform it here. And the question is how. So here are 3 access points that all of which I think came up kind of in our discussion so far. The first one is not knowing. So that's underrated. Right? What's overrated? Knowledge, right? That's the problem of the university today, but not only university, and all our institutions, right? Overrated knowledge, underrated not knowing. And yet, all the most important things we don't know, right? For example, the future, right? What's going to happen next week? No one knows. Or by the end of the year. Secondly, discomfort. Overrated comfort, being inside your comfort zone. Underrated discomfort. Anyone who works in leadership development knows, as long as we stay inside our comfort zone, you're not learning anything new that is going to change your behavior. It's just not. So you don't need to stretch too far out, but you need to go to the edge, right? And becoming comfortable with kind of leaning into the edge, something that we saw also kind of with the whole kind of topic of failure, kind of, so is a very important dimension. And then, of course, what's the last thing that's overrated? Action. Everyone talks about action, right? It's not, inversely related to real action also, right? Why is it we are talking about action? Because it's missing. So what's the problem with action? If we instantly move to action, right? What are we doing? Reacting, doing more of the same. And if there's anything we all can agree on, it is this. More of the same is not cutting it, right? There needs to be a shift. We all know that. So that's why the overemphasis of action is a real problem. What's underrated? Non-action. What's a different word for that? Stillness. So, that's, of course, a well-known Chinese Taoist leadership principle, right? Kind of with minimal, kind of the natural path, kind of minimal action. Equanimity is a different word for this, right? It's kind of the resilience, emotional resilience, that as you lean into the chaos and the pain around us, that it's not derailing us, right? That we are leaning into what's happening outside the comfort zone. It's not derailing you, right? But it's kind of a way, a mode of operating that we can. And of course, humility, right, which was mentioned several times also this morning. So it's just kind of, these are the gateways, right, to accessing the open mind, open heart, open will. That's how it shows up. And these are very practical things because every single day and hour, we have opportunities to practice that. So that's, in a way, a little bit kind of the inner territory of leadership. And so before turning it over to Manish, I want to just kind of give one example, as I promised this morning, on what really does it mean to develop these capacities. Because this morning I basically said, okay, so yeah, that's all good, right? But we'll only make progress if we improve the quality of the soil, right? And the key for that is practice. It's not what we know, but what we embody in what we do. And that there are like different layers, kind of different capacities. So I want to double click on this one, listening. And it's closely related to dialogue, obviously, because listening is the invisible side of conversation, right? But I will just stay here and then we'll kind of move into a little reflection moment from that. So listening, needless to say, I mean, there's many leadership skills that are overrated, right? There's a long list of that. It's very clear what's most underrated, right? That's listening, right? It's the foundation for any kind of mastery in any kind of, really professional field. And so if you picture yourself, so the first level is basically not listening, right? Kind of listening from our habits of judgment, which means we're just reconfirming what we already know. Remember like a meeting you have been in where everything that happened, right? Really reconfirmed what you expected to see. That's when you're done with it. It's not good or bad, it's just 1 out of 4. And if that's the only mode we have, that can be a problem. So it's basically, you can picture that you're in a center. So if this is the boundary of your organization as a listener, the circle, and it's like you're inside your own prison, right? All the curtains are down, just like here, right? And all you see is your own side, right? That may be correct or not with what's happening. But you're not seeing what's going on outside, you're only seeing your own projection. Listening to factual listening, basically you get up, you go to the window, you open the curtain, and now you see something interesting, something you didn't expect, right? And that's what all scientific training kind of, skills us to do, lean into the disconfirming data, right? Because that's the source of tomorrow's innovation. So that's kind of really, you're noticing the differences, kind of you're using the open mind. But in all kind of transformational change, there's 2 more levels. Empathic listening, something that was referenced several times, which is really, the outcome here is not new stuff outside, but you see through someone else's eyes, right? You put yourself into someone else's perspective. What's the only way, right, we as humans can do that? Opening the heart, right? By which I mean using your feelings as antenna, right? As organs of perception, where you tune into someone else's experience. So we are wired to do that. It's just like professional education, schooling is socializing that out of us usually, but it's something we do quite naturally. And is, of course, an all user-centric design and empathic design, and kind of all of these methodologies are founded in that type of skill. All kind of the stakeholder mentioned you have to do. And then there's, so it's like kind of if you phenomenologically, what is that really? The place from where your perception originates moves from inside your system, which is my mind, to the place from where that other person is speaking from. So it moves outside of your own system, right? So it's a different relationship between self, where your perception originates, and your own bubble, right? Your own system. And that's really the key, right, for creating community, creating any kind of deep human connection, as we all know. Generative listening, meeting the emerging future in the moment, right? That's basically the Carl story this morning, the Kairos story. So meeting it, recognizing that moment, recognizing this is something that is looking at me personally, and making that choice, which is, am I going to step forward or not, more intentionally perhaps, right? So he can talk about that in hindsight, but if he would have been more clear the implications of that choice, he may have taken. He may have thought the concern not to mess up all his good colleagues, right? May have been not as strong there. So meeting the future in the moment, right? Kind of that's word number 4. So let me then demonstrate that, because okay, we can see that, basically what I'm saying is what happens, kind of the tangible outcomes from the activity of listening are a function of the inner place on that we operate. Closed mind, open heart, open will. So that's basically what, so I want to complete this with demonstrating what this inner place that because that's something very practical. So, and I want to just, put that visualize that into a gesture, and then you will recognize from your own. So number 1, downloading. That's like, so it's kind of me standing in front of you, right? Downloading is this, right? I'm not really seeing you. I'm kind of just going by my slides and kind of carrying through my plan, okay? So I see my screen, I don't see you. And so that's kind of one relationship we can have. Number 2, factual listening, right? Now it's kind of, I have my focus, it's almost kind of, I'm zooming in, right? On the object of interest, right? Could be here, can be that, right? Can be something else that I'm honing in on. So I'm on this side of the telescope. Whatever I'm zooming into is on the other side of the telescope. So it is a different relationship than kind of the screen here, but it's also to some degree, so some people would say limited, I would say it's focus, right? I call that focus, how I gather data from the environment. And so now I will switch from level 2 to level 3, from factual to empathic. Notice how the relationship that we have in the room is shifting. Just by one person doing this. And notice kind of where resides the relationship now, right? There's something here. I'm looking at you, but there's also kind of like this larger web of connection that is becoming more present, that is moving from outside our attention to inside our attention. And now, so that's level 3 listening, and now I move to level 4, right? Level 4 was kind of this generative. So it's, let's see what So, if I would have had more space, I would have probably gone a little bit more back because I wanted to be more aware of the whole in this direction, to not only kind of the group in front of me, but also the context that's holding our space here. And then there's a little kind of tuning into the moment in whatever way. And you also saw a navigation of kind of going one level down, right? Which is also, the moment I do that, you notice our relationship, right? We have one relationship here. The moment I do this, our relationship is shifting. Now it's kind of, I'm looking up to some of you, to most of you actually, if not all of you. And I'm more, my relationship is more kind of like holding a space for something that has its own direction and knowing and emergence, right? But that I put myself in support of. So you use your own self more as a stewarding instrument, if you want, right? So it's a different relationship. You all know all these 4 relationships I just demonstrated. You know that well from your own experience. We all do. That's what humans do. But what I'm saying is, we need to be able to navigate these 4 inner spaces that I just demonstrated, right? With my gestures. That's what we do every single moment. And we need to be more intentional. By intentional, I mean, if we are in a relationship, in a conversation, right, where we doing the same thing always produces the same outcomes that are frustrating us, then we need to ask ourselves the question, are we operating, are we having this conversation on the right kind of level? Or is my role as a change maker perhaps, and as a leader, to recognize that, so what is the right level? Because in social science, there's no good or bad, right? There's only appropriate or not appropriate to the situation that you face, which includes the intention, right? So you look at the outcomes that you create, and that defines the appropriateness. So are you operating on the right level, right? And if not, how can you shift the level, to shift the relationship that may then be able for you to create kind of a different type of result. So, all I did so far is just drawing a distinction here, right? To sharpening your own eye, to paying attention to your own attention. That's the key. It's the key for all mindfulness, for all awareness practices. It's also the key for leadership. It's like what, in the old agriculture was the tilling of the soil, right? It's the bending the beam of our attention back onto our own attention on how we co-enact and co-create the world. So with that as a background, here are 2 questions, right? For the next, just turn to each other, the next 3-4 minutes. Reflect on the main level of listening and perhaps conversation in your own institutional or organizational or work context, right? So what are the main levels you're observing today, right? So when you deal with your stakeholders, what actually are these? And to move your organization and kind of your project, your initiative forward, what levels of conversation listening are in need of an upgrade, right? Because, in any kind of human life and organization, you have all 4. The question is, are we moving to the right mode of connection and relationship for the right purposes, right? In the right moment. So that's what I'm asking you here. So what's current reality? Question 1. And question 2, moving forward. To be successful, and we all are here because we say, hey, we need to change something. This is the essence of shifting the social soil on a micro level. What is micro? What I can control, right? What we co-enact when we begin to have a conversation. We all are the makers of this micro soil. And this is, just a little reflection on what do you see when you, from that lens, look into your own context. 2 minutes and 2 minutes, 4 minutes conversation, one-on-one. So just turn to one neighbor.
Thank you. Sorry for interrupting many great conversations, but maybe we can hear just kind of a couple of comments on what came up. Okay.
I have a question because I want to do all these things, but I'm operating in the context of a VC-funded business that's really struggling to survive. So I'm operating in the old world context.
Yeah.
So the daily stressors and pressures, I feel like a lot of this is about time and kind of having the luxury of time to connect deeper, engage deeper. And when you're constantly facing these pressures and stressors, they kind of permeate everyone's consciousness. They're part of like the problem. So how do you still intentionally do this work when every single one of us is going to be in a context where we're either facing the donor pressure, the customer pressure, we're still dealing with many people who are still in the old system. And we are not in the position of power in that context.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's exactly where that is applicable, right? Because that's the role of change makers, right? You need and how do you turn a person you want to change into someone who starts listening to you? And the answer is listening. That's the only way. If you come in with in the front door with your messaging, well, I mean, I have this reaction, right? If there is, so if you start with listening, that's exactly where this is applicable. And so we have, it takes time, yes, but we all have like 16 hours a day, right, doing this. So what I'm saying, so it's true and not true, right? Because we have meetings, we have one-on-ones, we have stakeholder conversations. And so that's exactly when this is applying. Can you on top of that ask, okay, are there other, so I remember, for example, a person I really learned kind of a lot from this deep listening conversation. So I was asking him, so what is really, so was it creating kind of this deep trust space kind of within like minutes? So how does that really, he said, the most important hour of the conversation, they often took an hour or so or more, is the hour before. So it's kind of how we enter into that. It's where we build, where we connect with our own intention, right? That's kind of where you set your own intention, what it is you want to be in service of. It's kind of maybe our morning practice before we move into the chaos, right? It's kind of when you wake up, do you go to the device first or do you go to your attention and intention first, right? That's the most important choice. So it's starting the day with this foot or the other one, right? And well, I'm only talking about it because I have problems with that as well at times, right? So, but now, those are the levels. We always make choices. There's the inner place from which you operate. No one in the world is dictating to you. You are in charge, and you are the person accountable for that.
Just as a woman, I feel like I need to push back a bit because I feel like, as I've actually timed the amount of time that men speak in our meetings versus the women. And so actually, we are listening. We can't help it. We're always the ones listening. So, I mean, how much more listening do I need to be doing? I mean, I've timed our meetings, because in order to kind of share this feedback sometimes, which is that the men spoke for 90% of the time in the meeting.
What's that?
Then she wasn't listening, she was timing the meeting.
Okay. It's a good point. So kind of it could be explored further, but so I appreciate that point. So is there one other? Okay.
I was just feeling that maybe there are times that you need all forms of listening to, four of them. when there is a time for transformation, which can be mostly, when you listen deeply. And there are times when we need to be empathic. There are times we need to be focused. There's so maybe we cannot say that one is bad, one is good, and it's just well.
Yeah, that's right. And that is also, of course, applicable to the conversational level, right? There are times where you need to create boundaries, where you need to take a stand. There is kind of a political space in the organization. That's true. So that's why I said it's not like either or. It's kind of when is which level appropriate. And actually, do you have this vocabulary of the entire spectrum, or are you just stuck in one or two of them? Yeah. So.
I think talking about being stuck in one or two of them usually.
Can you hear me now? Yeah. So I think usually what I've found the most common is levels 1 and 2. And level 3 is usually one-on-one only. Then I feel like personally I can just speak from my perspective that I can feel myself go into that level of listening, but I'm not 100% sure what level 4 would really look like, because I feel like it's on another level, and I think that's the one that I've seen the least of as well, and especially in an organization, where people are talking about less time and less all of this. You're always in the do phase, and then there's not a lot of time to think about what exactly you want to be doing, and so there. People usually just download information or they look for new information and how do we move forward? And then the empathetic or the generative kind of becomes less common or
Answer that in the story.
Okay. Yeah. Exactly. Perfect segue. Go on, segue.
And if you can hold the, maybe I'm going to share a few stories of application, and maybe that will answer this question and some of the question while acknowledging there are more questions in the room and not time for all the answers. But that, to your point also, I think that is part of the practice is awareness of what are the unconscious biases and privileges I'm coming from, which are going to play here, and that's a responsibility of, and therefore the R before. And while he is changing the slide, a micro story, I remember Otto, when I went from India to US in search of my answers, and I met Otto. And Otto, if you remember, we were going to meet IMF chief. Two of us were going to interview. He was interviewing and I was with him. And I was full of anger because economy had come down, 2008 crisis. I was having so many judgments and I was just talking to him. And he said, wait, we cannot enter with this. So we sat outside in the MIT cycle park. And he asked me to meditate. And I was what, like 20 years back? I was very young. And I was looking at all the boys and girls passing by. I said, what? He's asking to meditate here? But he was meditating. By meditating, I mean he was quiet. His eyes closed and he's attending. And then after some time looking at him, looking here, looking there, I finally started attending. And I realized that moment of preparation, of settling your own noise, so you're more available first to yourself and to the other. Otherwise, all those lenses operate, your past anger, unconsciousness, and those are the filter with which only level 2, maybe level 1 downloading is happening. So I just remembered that. Okay, so I'm going to, let me try to fix it here so my hands are free. So I think one of the things before I start telling this story is that I heard so many of us are in the business of building networks, creating ecosystems. That's what we want. At the same time, and more I work with networks, I also see it's like such a hard work. So much work to bring people together, and then they go back into their silos, and then you work for years, and then they go back again. It's so much hard work, and it is lonely. One thing, I mean, maybe true for you, it's so difficult to tell your family what you do. Right? My wife introduces like this, when my friends come, let me tell you what I do, then I'll go and take tea, and you have rest of the evening for him. So because we are, like Otto said, 4.0 challenges 2.0 model, right? How do we do? How do we upgrade that software, not just at the micro level that we talked about, but how this micro transforms the macro? So that's the question I will explore. The thing that is now thankfully well understood in our work is systems thinking. We're talking about systems thinking, need to see the whole system from multiple perspectives. But what we are talking about, that's not enough. That can create sometimes overwhelm such a complex system. Where do I intervene? But then we need another level, coming to the open heart, system sensing. How do we, remember Otto's slide? How do we see and sense the system together? That not just we are sensing, but we are feeling it in the body. We are feeling what it feels to be the woman. We are feeling it what it feels to be the farmer, to be the climate refugee. That deeper understanding is what will then shift the attention and eventually shift the agency. That is the inquiry. And one of the things that we bring among many other methods, which for the collective level of attending, is social arts, and one of the methods is social presencing theater. So I'm going to just share some images that how we bring this non-verbal, non-analytical, non-linear, and non-action methodology which boycotts the thinking mind, because thinking mind, as Krishnamurti says, is actually the old mind. It's the old brain. So he says, abeyance of the thinking brain will create the new. So this is a method, social presencing theater, which helps us sense into, feel into the collective social body, my body and the social body. What is this field asking from me? And that shifts the agency. That challenges the whole ego pattern that I'm coming with. It just takes us there. So that's the method some of you are familiar with. I'm going to show some images of how that happens. Okay, so this is a story from Cambodia. We have, let me share and you will, doing the slides. Okay, I have to do this way, right? Yeah. So this is where this was piloted in 1819 and then expanded to 24 plus 30 countries. Actually, Otto talked about that today. And Cambodia was one of the pilots. And it happened in 2 cycles. We physically were there doing the first one, and the second one we started online during the COVID and continued. So what is it about? The challenge here broadly was that you understand this is a structural challenge in a way that UN around the world has developed this management accountability framework. The intent is to bring different agencies of the UN together under resident coordination office so that we can collectively partner with the government and attend to the SDG goals. Good intention. Bringing people together. Different structures, different silos, where the resident coordinator, just like the donkey cart story, is telling, my budget is less than the meeting budget, my annual budget is less than the meeting budget of the agencies who are having bigger funds. So why will they come? So those kind of real challenges, structural challenges were coming into place. So how do we move from that level 2, in a way, to this deeper level of listening, attending and connecting? So here we started with, okay, go this way, yes. So this is the journey which Otto talked about, and I'm not going to spend too much time. The broad movements of the U is we initiate together, uncover the common intent, we sense. We take sensing journeys, we go to the field, we use different methodologies which you also do to sense. That is the key. And that leads to intention, which is connecting to the source of inspiration and will. What is a collective source of inspiration? That creates agency, we create prototypes, we start experimenting, and we integrate into the whole. Good process, right? Sounds good?
Yes.
Yeah? This is how it looks like in real world. You're going through it again, and then you think, if you go back again, you start with this new guy comes, so once again you have to do that. One guy leaves, you have to once again go back to the drawing board, and that's what it is. Like you agree, you're practitioners. This is our complexity, right? So, when we started, our question was, how do we develop a collaborative leadership in context of UN reforms? We did what we did, but then we hit a failure. Failure means it's so difficult to bring them together. Agency heads are very busy, they're sending the junior people. So there's a great collaboration among junior people, but there's nothing happening on the top. So what do we do? Now failure to me is an opportunity, that's a crack in our language sometimes we say. that is an opportunity to reflect what is failing actually. Maybe my assumption is failing. Maybe what I'm driving, my ego, my idea, something is failing. And what wants to come through? What we need to let go? What must fail here and what cannot fail? And that inquiry, I asked the resident coordinator, Pauline Thanesis, who is right now resident coordinator of Philippines. She said, we don't have a case big enough to collaborate. And so we said, what is that? And that led to another circle, right? Every crack opens something. And that is what would empower youth to learn, earn, and contribute to sustainable development of Cambodia. Because the question of youth in Cambodia was running across all agencies, everywhere that question was there. And then we invited young people, we invited them and we asked them, and they framed this question in their language. Actually, the first question which agencies framed was a bit like, what is institutional alignment, co-creation, collaboration? So I said, that's too early. Let's go to the youth. And they said, simple. What would empower us to learn, earn, and contribute to sustainable development of Cambodia? And we then entered into another inquiry. So, what we call youth-led venture lab. 100 people, 60% young people from across sectors gathered to inquire into this question. But to do that deep sensing, we used what we call social presencing theater to embody. We asked them to, rather than telling us what is happening, because there is so much cognitive filters, we said, let's embody, let's show us what is happening. And you can see these maps in which the lady in the pink is Pauline. So when you see the resident coordinator herself entering and playing some other role, this is what was tweeted by one of the human leaders, how to transform overpowering structures into supporting structures. Sometimes, to enable the system shift, you need to embody that shift. So that's what happened. However, what happened, this was our last day, around 4 p.m., that workshop was over. I thought, great insights, 6 projects, we are moving ahead. And my friend Katie was there, and I said, Katie, we've done our job, let me go and have a good cup of tea on the terrace. I am having my tea quietly. One young woman walks to me and she says, this won't work. So my first part was, I didn't want to hear that. The job is done, a massage booked in the hotel, and I want to go home, right? I want to put a good ribbon. What this like, I don't like failure stuff. So she says, but then Otto does deep listening, so I said, okay, fine. Tell me. And then she pierced my heart. So that's the risk of opening heart. It will be pierced, and that's necessary for doing the change. And what she said is that our deeper patterns, the way we engage with young people in this country, in these institutions, they drag us all the time. If that doesn't change, none of this will work. So long walk, corridor was very far, long walk, I'm walking towards the room. Katie is preparing for the closing circle. And I said, Katie, this happened. We got to do something. And she looks into the agenda, she says, you have 45 minutes, what you can do? I said, okay. And that's what we do next. I asked them to show us how youth are experiencing. They create this social sculpture where they have institutions, parents, and one of the human leaders embodied this youth. And when she stepped into the youth, she had tears and, oh my God, this is how it feels. This is how we are making them feel. And the young person is here. So when we embody that, it makes visible the deeper reality. It's a felt experience. This is systems sensing, not just systems thinking, oh, youth are here, what we need to do. You become that and know what you feel. And when we did that, this story is important because of good documentation from my screenshots. They tweeted, and I said, oh good, this is good documentation. So she is the woman who walked, and that's the terrace. And she said, I feel many institutions and business always look in front, and youth like me have to run so hard to follow them. I wish they could look back sometimes and ask me what I want. I wish they would share what they want from me. When we showed this, she stated this, because she got a voice, because she was represented, she got a voice. She said that, and somebody from the UN recorded that. It went to their heart too, not just mine, right? And then, a little later, this statement came. I'm not sure what the future holds, but after this week, I know young people in Cambodia will have a say and have a space to lead. And Fabien, one of the youth representatives, mentioned that. So just to show you a shift, and this led to youth-led cafes, and youth took the leadership. It just started transforming, and we said, great, finally, after 2 setbacks, we are there. What happened? It died a natural death. So now what? But that was again another crack. Because we came to the drawing board, what needs to die now? What are we taking for granted? What failure was necessary? And something sustained. And that led to the second journey, which was Cambodia Future Labs, which is basically answering the question that how do we now create a culture? So in Pauline's video somewhere on YouTube, she says that although all the 6 prototypes could not survive after 6 months, but the essence of that survived. We started engaging with the youth differently. We started looking for them in every meeting. We started inviting them. And in the process, she discovered a gentleman called His Excellence Boros, a young political leader. He says, I will work with you, let's rebuild this. And they rebuilt this. They got around 25 to 30 young people from business, from government, from UN, which none of us would have imagined. And they took the journey together. They created a platform which is still going, right? And to end this part of the story, this is what Boris said when we asked him that what is happening, right? Generally they talk outcomes, but it's a very different kind of outcome here. It's not measurable, he says, because impact is so huge that it could potentially set off a chain of reaction. It continues and goes on. So that is the question. Sometimes there is this deep, I realize in our work, deep fascination for outcome. But sometimes understated outcome is the relationship, is the empathy, is dropping our mindset, is the tears shed in the meeting. That is what I think the attention shifts to notice something else. And as the journey, it led to shared vision and commitment of 100+ leaders, 6 innovation prototypes with 60% young leaders, 2 prototypes scaled at Cambodia Future Lab, which became an innovation platform. So I'll not go in more details, but that's to give you a sense that how seeing and sensing and constantly applying that and helping the system to sense itself has a potential to shift the agency. It shifts the attention to the blind spots, right? And I'll just add one more part, a little bit, another story, a short part of that from India. And that's about anti-trafficking. I believe some of you are in that field, working in that area of with women. And this is where 2 organizations who invited me are Kamano Hashi and Save the Children India, maybe you know them. And they're kind enough to give us permission to use this. And this is also in one of our Ravana's book, this story. So what the challenge there was, and this may be a challenge related to many of us in the room, the challenge there was that, the initial challenge was that the funder, and interesting to see 2 people here, right? The funder and the implementation organization had a conflict which was more than now 5 years old. They good relationship, they will meet. But then there was a conflict, and conflict was deeply philosophical also and deeply practical also, because it's something like that, just to give you a symptom of that. If a woman who was sold from eastern part of the country in Mumbai and suffered the trauma of being a sex worker, and now she is 35 something, and she joins the pimps. She actually joins the trafficking system and starts trading other women. Should she be prosecuted or should she be saved and helped, right? So these kind of conflicts were emerging. Where do we put our attention? Should we keep working on anti-trafficking system in this area of the country, or we need to start working on the source? So these were many such questions were there, and there was a conflict between the two on how the funds are going to be utilized, what we need to focus on, and all that. Every time that will emerge, and they thought that they were all mediators, so they were not able to resolve, and they called me. And throughout the workshop, they would ask me, "Could you not have a mediation?" I said, "You are mediator, you should have that. I just know sensing, and I'm given to sensing." So this is what we did. So I have to go this way. I asked them, "Show me how you feel what is this challenge? Show me how you feel stuck. And when they embodied, when they showed, they started seeing common patterns. And some of the insights that emerged from this, that this social presencing theater, one of them said, generates compassion that helps us see our role in co-creating the system. And when some of them are embodying and others are witnessing, then you see this woman is noticing, oh, he is embodying me. Is this the way he experiences me? Am I like this? Am I being a force or a help? So the conversation shifts to a very deeper level of, and not just in terms of, you start having empathy for those. You start seeing that everyone is equally stuck in the system. And at some stage, I remember on third day I asked, do you still need that mediation? She said, yeah, but maybe not. And then this was this. While ego mind was still craving for conflict, the process helped the social body to dissolve it. You need resolution or dissolution, and the process allowed it dissolution while you're still looking for resolution. So that was just to show, and we did one of the activities which Otto mentioned today, and it was there in the previous story also, which is called 4D mapping, where we map the collective system together. So in Cambodia, I had an image of that. Here we didn't click the image. It was very intense and personal. But we created a sketch of it for our own knowledge, right? This is a collective harvest. So these are the roles you see we map. We map the whole ecosystem through our bodies, and using mindfulness, social mindfulness, we saw what wants to emerge. And this made visible how family and dignity were always on the blind spot of judiciary. How their assumption was, and that is our mental model. Somebody talked about the mental models. This shows the collective mental model. This is like a social MRI, right? This shows the collective mental model. And when we move, when we allow the body to move, it shows us where it wants to move. The girl didn't want to go to judiciary. She wanted to go to the family and the dignity which had no power in them. And what this led to, this allows for the conversation to shift in the room. And these are some of the harvest. Current system that we created to help victims is actually exploiting them. So it's not that this wisdom was not in the room, but now it's mirrored. It's deep social mirror. It's collectively visible, that wisdom. So now the people, now grassroots workers, because this was cross, we had funders, we had NGO, we had grassroots workers, we had headquarter people. So now the grassroots worker is able to say, that's what I was telling you, you can see it here. They get voice, the attention shifts, the power shifts. We assumed that working for justice is enough. No, she is longing for dignity. Judiciary is stuck. Community and dignity is in the state. And we need to work at source. So now that wisdom comes. This was totally not doable before this. And this immediately leads to two initiatives. We talk about collective agency. One, let's reframe the purpose from anti-trafficking to pro-dignity. We need to shift our identity. So level 4, shift in identity. Organizational shift in identity. And the second, the funder was in the room. Everyone was crying, including me, because it was so painful. You cannot engage in this work unless you take the journey yourself. And still gets me. A night before when they said we had to do the map, they told their stories. It was so painful. I just said, I have nothing in me as a man. How am I going to handle this? And I thought I'm a white-collar, clean man. I never go to a red light area, but I am also co-creating this system. And as Peter sometimes says, that you cannot change the system unless you see your handprint in it. And they made me see my handprint in it, in the suffering of those women. So that night I just went on the floor and I said, God has help. I was not aware that was Kalkaratri. Navarat was going on. And next morning, what unfolds. We could see the pain in the room. The man who was embodying the girl was shooting like this in the map. Where is that happening from? Because when you attend to the field attends to you. Field will respond. Field will speak through your being. And the field spoke. And then there was a funder in the room. He said, budgets are not yet done. You have been talking about the source. 15% of the budget will be committed right away to engage judicially with the source. Then somebody says, I know this judge, I know that, and a prototype in Nagpur is born right away. So let's move from here to, do we have 2 days? Can we go to Nagpur right away? The whole agency shifts. So sometimes we are fortunate to see that agency shifting in the room. And this was one moment. But it shifts you. And I have yet been I'm still working in Bali. This project came up again. Similar anti-trafficking project came up again. So this project also finds me and finds us, and we become part of that co-creation. So that's just these are the 2 stories to show basically that when there's a shared acknowledgement of suffering, it creates an compassion that releases the stuck energy of the system and leads to a new generative possibility. So I think I took too long. I will pause now. Yeah. So that's just many parts. We have done this work. Bangalore, Agami, you can see, and I don't know if you have time for question or should we have time for you?
You always.
Yeah. I just want to say one more thing, is that I thought the greatest, I used to think in the early days that the big power of this work is that we have this transformative shift and prototypes coming out. Then I realized that that's not the real thing. The real thing is that how the attention shifts in the room. And recently working, because this one came up, recently working with Agami, which is a law and justice network. We were in Bhopal, where this, on the 40th anniversary of Bhopal gas tragedy. 750 people, and we have worked over 6 years. Around 100 people have gone through deep journeys across the law sector, judges, jailers, innovators, and all of that. And then when we were listening to the people there, we realized that we have done nothing. We realized that we have done nothing. We have so much pain, and still, there is a gross injustice that takes place in the heart of this country, and what have we done about it? We're running around, not listening, not sitting with them, right? And in that moment, I realized that the core capacity of this work the core purpose of this work is to develop the collective capacity to sit with the other in their pain. And that's where I remember Otto's 3 things, that sitting with the discomfort, stepping into the not known, and being with non-action. Because I was trying to give solutions, and they said, no, you're not hearing. There is still waste, methyl cyanide waste on the streets. People are still being born, 22,000 are dead. And what are you talking about? And in that moment, I realized that the deepest part of this work is to sit and mourn where the system is. And that is one of the outcomes totally underrated. That unless we feel and sense the pain of the system together, where will we get our deepest agency to transform it? We can say, okay, enough, let's get to action. But we have ignored whole layer. So that's one of the things that I learned. So my inquiry always is, and to you, as you listen to this, what resonates with you? And what are the collective challenges that you wish to co-sense with your community or network of stakeholders? What are those blind spots? What are those pain points, those cracks that need to be collectively attended to? Don't worry if you have the methods or not, but that intention will bring the methods to you, bring the right people to you. So take a moment to attend what needs to be attended to in your space. Maybe just take a moment to journal this, and then we'll get back to you. Okay, the 3 things is, first is from knowing to not knowing, stepping into the not known, really deeply listening, activates curiosity. From comfort to discomfort, the edge of comfort, the capacity to sit at the edge of the comfort, edge of discomfort, going there at the divide, and before jumping to action, feeling that it is uncomfortable, it challenges everything I know about my life, but then I want to feel, I still want to feel. And the third part is non-action, not jumping into action, but just, it's not inaction, it's non-action. So anyways, please reflect on what is alive for you as you listen to this.
question.
Can you take a moment to just let people right? Okay, so let's take that and let people have some time question.
So is anger a good thing in this context, right?
Um,
If you're angry, it might actually make you do something in a positive direction also. But
Yeah,
you're frustrated with the system,
Yeah.
you want to change it.
I want to quote Otto here. Frustration is the most powerful energy. We have this question, what frustrates you? Because in frustration lies what is not working, but also your agency which is being hit. So I think what we do, the work is when I feel anger, to first feel it. Before enacting it, embody it. That's the key differentiation. Before enacting it, embody it. Feel where it feels in my body. Feel it. Maybe you should give it a shape. My anger is like this or like this. So what is the shape of my anger? And then feel where are others and where it wants to go. And then you let it move. And that gives you actually the way out of the anger. So yes, it is a great thing. It has a use. It helps you connect. It's the fire needed for transformation. Any other question?
Hi Manish, as you told about the Krishnamurti, so I was reading his book Relationship, and what you are saying is resonating in that book. Every time you connect with a person, react with new, without any beliefs. If I am connecting with new without any beliefs, but he or she is connected with me with beliefs. So there is a conflict. But what you are saying, I'm listening into it, but I'm not getting how to do it.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
It's a
So the thing you are saying, sensing the other feeling, we got it. You become vulnerable, but सामने वाला वो नहीं समझ पाता. That's what
I think that is true. It's challenging, first of all, especially in tough circumstances. And I think no easy answers for me either. But what helps me is to attend to my own practice helps me to attend doing a little mindfulness, to attend to my own patterns in the moment. And that is actually the field. That is our playing field. When we are receiving judgments and cynicism, how do I not let that turn into me? And being able to sit there and notice and listen and bringing freshness. That's the practice field. I don't know, Otto, anything you have to say to that? That's the practice field. I know it's not easy. Mindfulness helps me because that helps me to not get stuck into the story, right? Whatever the story they have, I don't become part of the story. I still stay with the reality of the moment, which is my breath, my body, my being. And
So are you talking about meditation, or you are practicing means what?
practicing, my own practicing means, it could be meditation, it could be journaling, which is one thing we can offer now. Even journaling, reflecting on what are the patterns that are getting activated in me, how do I show up in spite of that. And then some of these methods which we shared with you also helps then, if I become more present, then hopefully I will be able to, and humble inquiry, what do you really mean by when you say this? And that may take both of you to a deeper dialogue. But it happens, you come across, not an easy answer, but maybe, yeah. And we have a practice which we can potentially do.
Yeah, so I want to, only adding maybe one word. So essentially, the specifics always depend on the context, right? But generally, kind of what we are saying is that the way we behave as humans is not one way or the other. It's a function of how you shape the context, right? The holding space. And that's your job as a change maker, as a leader, not telling people what to do, but create the right kind of holding space that allows you to access these deeper layers of intelligence that are always there, but not used if you are stuck here in the outside. So that's basically what we're saying. You can do that individually, you can do it in a one-on-one meeting, you can do it in any kind of team, and all the environments we do is action learning based, right? You work with a concrete issue, but then you wrap these practices, a different way of holding the space, which is essentially another way of saying building trust, right? That's why you would work often in small groups and so on and so forth. And then on the personal level, of course, it's personal practice, right? Kind of the stuff you do in the morning, so the way practices, right? What is a practice? It's stuff you do every day that allows you to connect with your own best sources, right? And that's kind of different things for me or you during different stages of our life, right? So there's not one size fits all, but are you doing something, right? And then there's this deep listening. So if you have deep coaching or dialogue, a peer coaching relationship with a few friends, often that's done in circles, or it's done one-on-one. That's the reason why the whole coaching industry has been exploding, right, the past 2 decades or so. But that's just the surface, right? The deeper layer is basically the need for us to have these deeper relationships. And then the most important leverage point, I would say, is do what you love and love what you do, right? And that is our superpower as this sector, right? So and that's often in all the frustrations. It's kind of in the hustle and bustle and of the day, right? So we need to unearth that. It needs our attention, right? So essentially, what we are saying is, so the soil of our planet is fragmented, it's dry, right? It's kind of eroding, soil erosion, right? And the same thing happens with the social field. It's the quality of our attention, it's the ever-shortening attention span. And how do you regenerate social soil? And the answer is by paying attention together. So what Manish shared, the 2 stories, is essentially what this 4D mapping does is making visible the least visible dimension of our relationships. That's usually kind of beneath the ground, right? That's kind of not, and what it does, right? There's different methods to do that. I use that stuff a lot in organizations because it's fast. We don't have time because we don't have money, right? It needs to be fast, and it creates a language that allows you to address these deeper issues, that gives you possible pathways that through experiment you can explore. You need this shared map, and the key is the shared seeing, right? That gives rise to that. So with that, I want to offer, so if you want to leave, so that the closing practice would be just 10 minutes, 7 questions, right? That I give you a minute per each. We have journals, so if you have a journal, many of you have, perfect. If not, we have extra ones here. We also have pens. The key of the journaling practice, which is a personal reflection practice, is very simple, which is that you take the pen, you put it on paper, and you start writing. It's not, I give you a question, and now you think, and once a brilliant idea has fully acted in your mind, then put it, no. Journaling is, I give you a question, you only got a minute, right? So I'm not going to wait. So you just number your response, and then go with the flow. So it's just kind of a different way of thinking with your hands, if you want. So as everyone has, if you don't have a journal or a pen or a piece of paper, a pad of paper, raise your hand so we can fix that now. And so with that, let's just move into that. I will just go these 7 questions and that will close this session. So over the past 2 days, so this afternoon, but also this entire morning and yesterday, what resonated, inspired, or irritated you most? So any moment, right? I talked about Carl's Kairos story this morning as a moment for me that really deeply resonated with me. So what was it for you? So Over the past 2 days, what resonated, inspired, or irritated you most? Remember the trick about journaling is the writing piece, not the thinking? Number 2, I once asked a teacher, so how do I find my purpose in life, right? If I don't know what it is, how do I find out? Answer, pay attention to your frustration, as Manish said, right? So we are only frustrated about things where there is something beneath kind of that is of significance. So number 2 is, what in your current work and life frustrates you the most? So just name the sources of frustration. No problem solving. Just name these sources of frustration. 3, Kairos. So now we come to Carl's way of, so and as I said at the outset of the session here, the future is a possibility that looks at me because it depends on me to manifest. So where in your current work and life do you feel the future? Do you feel a possibility that looks at you, that can be personally or part of something larger? Because it depends on you to manifest. Yes. Where in your current work and life do you feel the future? In other words, where do you feel a future possibility that perhaps is part of your pathway forward and that depends on you to come into being? Okay. 4, footprint. Imagine we could fast forward our life to the last moment. So when it's about time to cross, when we are facing or approaching the threshold of death, and imagine just before, right before you come to that threshold, you could stop, turn around, and look back at the wholeness of your life's and work's journey, which at that future point will be all behind you. So when that moment comes, when you approach that threshold, when you stand still, turn around, and look back, what is it you want to see? What is the footprint you want to leave behind on this planet when it's time for you to move on? So, try to finish up number 4. And then we come to number 5. And number 5 is basically you stay in this imaginary future state when you look back. Now imagine you could look back at your current moment now, February 2025. We were kind of at this conference, and imagine from that future point of your highest future possibility, you could give your current self 1 or 2 pieces of real advice. What would that be? Okay? Look at yourself from outside, kind of from that future point. Empathize with your current self, right? And then allow that advice to emerge from your heart and write it down. What advice are you giving to yourself from that future point, from your future state? Okay. Number 6. For number 6, we come here into the present moment, and now you look forward just the next few years, right? Kind of what's directly ahead. Let's say the next 5, 7 years, whatever that is. Something we are looking at now, and are shaping now, right? With the way we set the intention and so on. And 6 is something very simple. It's perhaps the most fundamental question for all great leadership and creativity at all, and that is, what future do you want to create? Describe your vision and intention. What future do you want to create? The more concrete, the better. Now, include the personal, kind of your levels of relationship, include the professional, the organizational, but also the larger movement we are all part of here. Define the what, don't worry about the how. What future are you actually standing for? as a change maker, as a leader, the more concrete and specific, the better. So, I mean, we all know the future is already here, right? So it's already here in the current moment, and often it's here in the form of seeds, right? So everything you just described, in a way, is already existing, but often only in small forms, right? Like a shoot or a seed. So look at the intention you just described, the intention you're holding, as you move forward. Where do you find the seeds of that intention in your current environment now? The seeds are there, but our role as change maker is paying attention to the seeds. It's like watering the seeds. If you drop a seed on stone, nothing is going to happen. If you take the same seed on soil, right, you see the whole kind of miracle of germination and so on. So it's our role, right, as change makers, as leaders, is paying attention to the seed. Okay. So and then the last one, I know I only have 7, so that's kind of, you don't need to write about that. If you were really serious about everything you just wrote, what could be in micro actions between today and tomorrow that would put you on a path from just considering and contemplating the future to actually realizing it? Just identify 1 or 2 micro actions. Okay, very good. It was good to be together with you, and sorry, we started a little late, we are ending a little late, but we hope it was something, and we make good use of the time together, and we look forward to carrying this into the future together. Thank you.